So how does a total nobody, I'm talking a failed artist, a drifter with basically zero prospects, somehow become one of the most powerful and destructive dictators in all of history? It's a huge question, right? Well, that's exactly what historian Ian Kershaw tackles. And today, we're going to break down his explanation for the rise of Adolf Hitler. This quote from Kershaw really gets to the heart of the paradox. The young Hitler was, for all intents and purposes, a profound failure. He was rejected from art school. He was living in hostels. He had no career, no real prospects. He was, as Kershaw puts it, a nobody. So how on earth do you get from that guy to the absolute ruler of Germany? Well, here's the thing. It wasn't just one single cause. It was more like a perfect storm. You had the man, you had his methods, you had a crisis he could exploit, and then, maybe most importantly, a catastrophic miscalculation by his enemies. So let's break that down. Okay, first, let's really let this sink in. On one side, you have a failed artist, just furious at the world, and on the other, you have a dictator who demands the absolute, unquestioning loyalty of millions. I mean, the transformation seems almost impossible to believe. To really get how that transformation happened, we have to look at three key moments. These moments didn't just shape his worldview, they actually forged what he came to believe was his divine mission. So this timeline, it shows a really crucial pattern. Every single failure just became a catalyst for him. The art school rejection in 1907, that fueled his deep resentment. The war in 1914, which he actually called a godsend, gave him a purpose he had never, ever had before. And then his prison sentence in 1924, well, that wasn't a punishment. It was an incubator for his megalomania. And that's exactly what was happening in that prison cell. He's surrounded by these followers who just adore him, and at the same time, he's watching the nationalist movement he was a part of completely fall apart without him. So the conclusion he draws is pretty simple. He and only he could be Germany's savior. That idea of a unique, historic mission was now totally locked in his mind. Okay, so he's got the mission. But how do you build a movement from scratch? Well, his methods were just as important as his message. He was first and foremost an absolute master of propaganda. Just look at that number for a second. 100. By the end of 1929, the Nazi Party was holding around 100 propaganda meetings every single day, all across Germany. This wasn't just a political party. This was a relentless machine designed to force its way into the national conversation through sheer non-stop activism. And it all came down to this pretty brilliant formula. First, promise to be legal. This calmed down the establishment who were nervous about another coup attempt. Second, offer a brutally simple message. Blame the system. Blame the Treaty of Versailles. Blame internal enemies. Third, project this image of unstoppable energy. While other parties were debating in parliament, the Nazis were out in the streets, marching. And fourth, and this was a masterstroke, keep the core message the same everywhere, but train local speakers to tweak it, to really dig into local problems and make it feel personal to everyone listening. But even the best propaganda machine needs fuel to run. A mission and methods, that wasn't enough. Hitler needed a national catastrophe. He needed a moment of deep, profound crisis that would make his radical message seem like the only possible solution. And in October 1929, he got it. The Wall Street crash didn't just cause a little recession in Germany. See, the German economy was propped up by American loans, so for them, it was a total and complete collapse. Kershaw calls this the crisis Hitler needed. It basically turned a fragile democracy into a failed state overnight. This chart, wow. This just shows you the sheer human cost of that collapse. Look at these numbers. You go from 1.3 million unemployed to over 6 million in just a few years. 6 million people. That kind of desperation just destroys your faith in the system, in democracy. When things fail that spectacularly, people start looking for really radical alternatives. So this desperation pushed millions of voters toward the Nazis, but it still didn't give Hitler power. And that brings us to the final and, maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle, the disastrous underestimation of Hitler by Germany's traditional political elites. So you have guys like Chancellor von Papen, a conservative aristocrat. He looked at Hitler and he didn't see a revolutionary threat at all. He saw a useful idiot, a loud, vulgar guy who was popular with the masses, someone he could use to fight his real enemies on the left, and then just toss him aside when he was done. Even President Hindenburg, this old war hero who personally could not stand Hitler, was eventually convinced by this same logic. The plan seemed foolproof to them. Let Hitler be chancellor, sure, but surround him with our people in the cabinet. We'll box him in. We'll control him. It was an idea born from pure arrogance, and it turned out to be catastrophically wrong. And this, right here, this is Kershaw's central argument. Hitler did not seize power in some grand revolution. Power was literally handed to him. It was the result of a shady, backroom political deal made by men who thought they were clever enough to tame a tiger. They believed they could control him, but in reality, he was about to control them. So on January 30th, 1933, that deal was done. Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The old conservative guard thought they had won, but the consequences were immediate, and they were absolutely devastating for what was left of German democracy. I mean, just look at how fast it all happened. Within a month, the Reichstag building conveniently burns down, providing the perfect excuse. One day later, an emergency decree is passed that gets rid of all basic civil liberties. And then in early March, Nazi stormtroopers just violently take over elected state governments. In a little over a month, German democracy was gone. And this one decree, this is the key to everything. It wasn't just some temporary measure. It became the pseudo-legal foundation for all the terror that came next, the arrests, the concentration camps, the whole thing. As Kershaw puts it, this was the charter of the Third Reich. It was the moment freedom died in Germany, all done under the cover of the law. So what Kershaw's analysis really shows us is that this catastrophic outcome was never inevitable. It wasn't fated to happen. It required this unique, terrifying convergence. A man with a messianic mission, a masterful propaganda method, a moment of profound national crisis, and, this is the crucial part, a series of fatal misjudgments by the very people who held power. It's a terrifying reminder that history isn't just shaped by grand, abstract forces. It turns on the choices and the failures of individual people.